I'm Nathan Collins, 35, CEO of Horizon Technologies. 12 years ago, I came home to find my car gone. The car I bought with my own money. Your CR paid for his future. Mom smiled, handing my brother Tyler a Harvard MBA acceptance letter. Today, Tyler walked into my office for a job interview. He didn't recognize me at first. My CEO badge gleamed as I leaned forward. So, how's that MBA working out? Before I tell you what happened next, let me know where you're watching from in the comments, hit that like button, and subscribe to see more stories about family, success, and sweet, sweet karma. Growing up in Oak Ridge, Michigan, I was always the practical one. Our modest suburban home housed 4 of us, my parents Howard and Margaret Collins, myself, and my younger brother Tyler. From the beginning, our roles were clearly defined in the family hierarchy. Tyler was the smart one, with his straight A's, academic decathlons, and Harvard aspirations. I was just Nathan. Don't get me wrong, I wasn't a bad student. I maintained a solid B average throughout high school, but Tyler was exceptional. While he was solving complex math equations and writing award-winning essays, I was more interested in how things worked. I could take apart and reassemble almost anything mechanical. Cars, computers, appliances, they all made perfect sense to me. Book smarts versus street smarts, Dad used to say when trying to make me feel better after Mom gushed over Tyler's latest academic achievement. But I always noticed how his eyes would linger longer on Tyler's report card than mine. The summer I turned 16, I got my first job at Baker's Hardware. 2 weeks later, I picked up a second job washing dishes at Luigi's Italian restaurant. By the end of the month, I was also mowing lawns on weekends. My friends thought I was crazy working 7 days a week. But I had a plan. You're saving for college, right? Mom asked one night when I collapsed on the couch after a 14-hour workday. Not exactly, I admitted. 6 months later, after nearly killing myself with work, I had saved up enough. Mr. Jenkins down the street was selling his 1987 Ford Mustang. It wasn't much to look at: faded red paint, a tear in the driver's seat, and an engine that coughed more than it purred, but it was everything to me. $2,500, I told my parents at dinner, proudly slapping down the cash I'd saved. I'm buying Mr. Jenkins' Mustang tomorrow. Mom frowned. Nathan, don't you think that money would be better spent on your education? Margaret, Dad interjected, surprising me with his support. The boy worked hard for that money. Let him make his own decision. The next day, the Mustang was mine. The title had my name on it, Nathan Collins, owner. For the first time in my life, I owned something significant, something that represented freedom and the fruits of my own labor. Dad and I spent the next 6 months restoring that car on weekends. It became our thing. The first real connection we'd had in years. Mom would peek into the garage occasionally, shaking her head at the grease-covered tools and car parts strewn about. I just don't understand the fascination, she'd say. But I saw how Dad's eyes lit up when we got the engine running smoothly, or when we finished repainting it a gleaming candy apple red. Meanwhile, Tyler was taking advanced placement classes and studying for the SATs. Mom spent hours helping him research colleges and scholarships. The kitchen table became command central for Operation Tyler's Future, as I jokingly called it when Dad and I were alone. Your brother is very gifted, Mom reminded me constantly. He could really make something of himself. The implication being, of course, that I wouldn't. By the time I graduated high school, the Mustang was completely restored. I drove it to my restaurant job with pride, occasionally taking the long way just to feel the engine's power and the wind in my hair. I had no immediate plans for college. I wanted to work, save money, and eventually start my own business. I had ideas about a custom car shop or maybe something in technology. Computers were another thing I understood intuitively. You need a degree these days, Mom insisted during one particularly heated dinner discussion. Look at your brother. He's going to Dartmouth with a scholarship. That's setting himself up for success. There are different kinds of success, I argued, but my words fell on deaf ears. As Tyler prepared to leave for his freshman year of college, Mom and Dad threw him a big party. Relatives, neighbors, and teachers all came to celebrate his achievement. I worked the grill and parked cars, including my beloved Mustang, which I carefully positioned under the shade of our oak tree. That car, Uncle Jack said, admiring the glossy finish. You did good, kid. Real good. His words meant more to me than any academic award ever could. Little did I know that 3 years later, that same car would become the catalyst for the biggest betrayal of my life and ultimately set me on a path that would change everything. The weekend had been perfect. I'd driven up to Lake Michigan with a couple of buddies from work, the Mustang purring along the coastal highway like it was born for those curves. At 21, I had a decent job as an IT support specialist for a local company, my own apartment, and my pride and joy, the car that represented everything I'd worked for. When I pulled into my parents' driveway that Sunday afternoon, I still visited for dinner once a week. Something felt off immediately. Dad's truck was there, Mom's sedan too. But the spot where I usually parked the Mustang when I visited was conspicuously empty. Maybe they had visitors, I thought, parking on the street instead. The moment I walked through the front door, I knew something was wrong. Mom, Dad, and Tyler were sitting in the living room, an unusual tableau of tense silence. What's going on? I asked, my eyes moving from one family member to another. Tyler looked down at his hands. Dad couldn't meet my eyes. Mom, however, stood up with a strange smile plastered on her face. Nathan, we have wonderful news. Tyler got accepted into Harvard Business School for his MBA. I blinked, confused by the tension in the room compared to the news. That's great. Congratulations, Tyler. Tyler mumbled a thanks, still not looking at me. The thing is, Mom continued, her voice taking on that high-pitched quality it got when she was nervous but trying to sound confident. The scholarship only covers part of the tuition, and with the economy the way it is, a cold feeling spread through my chest. Where's my car? The silence that followed confirmed my worst fears before anyone spoke. Your CR paid for his future, Mom finally said. That smile still fixed on her face as she put her hand on Tyler's shoulder. Mr. Ramirez from the dealership gave us a very fair price. Between that and what we had saved, Tyler can accept his spot at Harvard without taking on too much debt. The room spun. I steadied myself against the wall. You sold my car? My car? The one I bought with MY money? Now, Nathan. Dad finally spoke, his voice low. We know you're upset. Upset? Upset? My voice rose with each word. That was MY property. My name was on the title. That's not just wrong, that's illegal. We added our names to the title when you were away, Mom said dismissively. You were still a minor when you bought it, so legally. So legally you could steal from me? I was shaking now. Did either of you even think to ask me first? Tyler finally looked up. Nathan, I didn't know they were going to do this. I would have said no if... Save it, I snapped at him. You could have turned down the acceptance if you knew they couldn't afford it. But Harvard was too important, right? The golden child had to have his MBA. This is a family decision, Mom said firmly. We invest in the future with the most potential. Tyler's education will benefit all of us in the long run. The words hit me like physical blows. The future with the most potential. Not my future. Not my potential. I worked 3 jobs for that car, I said quietly, deadly. I put in every spare hour, gave up every weekend, every party. Every normal teenage experience. Dad and I restored it together. It wasn't just transportation. It was everything I had accomplished. Dad at least had the decency to look ashamed. Son. I tried to talk your mother out of it, but. But what? But you gave in? Like always. I turned back to Mom. Where's the money? At least give me what they paid for it. Mom's expression hardened. The money has already been sent to Harvard as the first tuition installment. It's done, Nathan. You need to accept it and be happy for your brother. I laughed, a hollow sound devoid of humor. Happy? That you stole from me? That you've made it crystal clear which son matters to you? That's rich, Mom. I looked at each of them in turn. Mom, righteous and unapologetic. Dad, guilty but spineless. Tyler, conflicted but ultimately complicit. I'm done, I said finally. I'm done with all of you. I stormed upstairs to my old bedroom, grabbed the duffel bag I kept there for weekend visits, and threw in the few belongings I still kept at my parents' house. Photos, high school yearbooks, the custom tools Dad and I had used on the Mustang. As I was shoving clothes into the bag, Tyler appeared in the doorway. Nathan, please, he said, his voice breaking. I didn't ask them to do this. But you're not giving back the money, are you? I countered, not looking at him. You're not turning down Harvard. His silence was answer enough. When I came back downstairs, Mom was in the kitchen pretending everything was normal, starting dinner preparations. Dad sat at the table, nursing a beer. I don't want to hear from any of you, I said from the doorway. Not until you understand what you've done. Not until there's a real apology and real amends. Don't be so dramatic, Mom replied, chopping vegetables with sharp, angry movements. Family makes sacrifices for each other. One day you'll understand that your brother's education is more important than a car. It wasn't just a car, I shouted, finally losing the last threads of my composure. It was the only thing in my life that was ever just mine. The only accomplishment anyone in this family ever recognized. Dad stood up then, approaching me with his hands out placatingly. Son, we know you're angry now, but in time. In time what? I'll forgive you? I'll forget? No, Dad. Some things can't be undone. I shouldered my bag and headed for the door. Tyler, good luck at Harvard. I hope it's worth it. As I walked out that door, I didn't know it would be years before I'd speak to any of them again. I didn't know that this betrayal would fundamentally alter the course of my life. And I certainly didn't know that one day, Tyler would walk through my door looking for a job, unaware that his brother, the one whose car paid for his prestigious MBA, was sitting in the CEO's chair. But that's getting ahead of the story. First, I had to figure out how to get to work the next morning without a car. The first few months were the hardest. My apartment was on the outskirts of town, chosen specifically because it had safe parking for the Mustang. Without a car, my 20-minute commute became a 90-minute ordeal involving 2 bus transfers. I started waking up at 5 a.m. just to make it to work by 8. The IT support job paid enough to cover rent and food, but saving for another car seemed impossible. Every penny went to survival. I stopped going out, stopped buying anything beyond necessities, worked overtime whenever it was offered. My social life withered to nothing. In those dark early mornings waiting for the bus in Michigan winter, I had plenty of time to think about my family's betrayal. I received voicemails from Dad occasionally, text messages from Tyler. Mom sent holiday cards as if nothing had happened. I responded to none of them. 6 months in, I caught a break. One of our company's servers crashed during a critical client presentation. The IT manager was on vacation, and no one could figure out how to recover the data. I stayed late, worked through the night, and by morning had not only recovered everything but improved the backup system to prevent future failures. That was impressive work, said a voice from the doorway as I was packing up to leave. I turned to see Raymond Walsh, the company's VP of Operations, leaning against the doorframe. In his 50s with salt and pepper hair and shrewd eyes. Raymond wasn't someone I'd interacted with much before. Just doing my job, sir, I replied, exhausted after the all-nighter. No, he said thoughtfully. Your job was to call in external support and tell us it would take days. Your job wasn't to solve a problem our senior engineers couldn't crack. He offered to buy me breakfast. Over eggs and coffee, Raymond asked about my background, my interests, my goals. I found myself telling him everything, my practical intelligence, my entrepreneurial dreams. Even the car and my family's betrayal. So you understand systems intuitively, he summarized when I finished. Not just computers, but how parts work together to create something greater than the sum of those parts. I nodded, surprised by his insight. We need someone like you on the business side, he said. Someone who can see how all the pieces fit. Would you consider moving from IT support to a junior business analyst position? Working directly with me? That conversation changed everything. Under Raymond's mentorship, I learned how businesses functioned, how markets worked, how to identify opportunities others missed. I absorbed everything, staying late to study reports, taking online business courses, asking endless questions. You've got a natural talent for this, Raymond told me after I identified a potential acquisition target that everyone else had overlooked. You see value where others don't. My career began advancing rapidly. Junior analyst to senior analyst to team lead in 3 years. I saved enough to buy a sensible Honda, then a small condo. I started dating Rachel, a marketing director I met during a product launch. Unlike my family, she valued my practical intelligence and entrepreneurial instincts. You're going to run your own company someday, she predicted one night as we celebrated my latest promotion. I can feel it. Through the grapevine, distant relatives who still kept in touch, I heard bits about Tyler. Harvard MBA obtained. Prestigious consulting firm job landed. Yet strangely, he seemed to jump from position to position, never staying anywhere long. Your cousin says Tyler's brilliant but has trouble with real-world applications. My aunt mentioned during one of our rare phone calls. Theory versus practice, I suppose. I couldn't help but feel a flash of vindication, which I immediately felt guilty about. Despite everything, Tyler was still my brother. When Raymond announced his retirement, I worried my career advancement might stall. Instead, the new VP, Diane Mercer, was even more impressed with my work. You don't just identify opportunities, she told me after I presented a comprehensive analysis of a struggling division. You see solutions others miss. At 28, I became the youngest division manager in company history. I built a team that reflected my values, people with diverse thinking styles, backgrounds, and educational paths. I promoted based on results, not credentials. You've created the most cohesive team in the company, Diane observed during my annual review. How do you do it? I value different kinds of intelligence, I explained. Traditional education is just one path to knowledge. My division's success attracted attention. When global innovations, a Fortune 500 technology leader, acquired our company, I worried about my future. Instead, they were fascinated by our results. Your division outperforms others with twice the resources and people with far more impressive resumes, said James Whitaker, global CEO, during our first meeting. Tell me your secret. No secret, I replied. Just respect for practical intelligence and creating systems where everyone can contribute their strengths. When our integration was complete, James offered me a senior vice president position at Global's headquarters in Chicago. Rachel, now my fiancée, supported the move completely. This is your moment, she said as we packed our apartment. Everything you've worked for. Around this time, Mom and Dad reached out more persistently. They'd heard about my success through family channels and suddenly wanted to reconnect. We met for an awkward dinner when they visited Chicago. We always knew you'd do well, Mom said. As if the past 7 years of estrangement hadn't happened. Did you? I asked quietly. Because I distinctly remember being told Tyler had the future with the most potential. Now, Nathan, Dad began, but I cut him off. I'm not looking to rehash old wounds, I said, but I won't pretend they don't exist either. When Mom started comparing my achievements to Tyler's, who was now on his 4th job in 5 years despite his Harvard credentials, I realized some things never change. We parted with vague promises to stay in touch, promises I had no intention of keeping. A year after joining Global, disaster struck. A catastrophic security breach exposed customer data and sent the company's stock plummeting. The cybersecurity team was paralyzed, the board was panicking, and James was facing intense pressure to resign. Drawing on my IT background and business acumen, I assembled a cross-functional team that worked around the clock. We not only contained the breach but implemented a revolutionary security architecture that became an industry benchmark. When I presented our solution to the board, the relief was palpable. "You didn't just fix a problem," James told me afterward. "You turned a crisis into an opportunity." 3 months later, when James announced his early retirement, the board's choice for his replacement stunned everyone, including me. At 33, I became the youngest CEO in global innovations history. Soon rebranded as Horizon Technologies under my leadership. The frightened, carless young man waiting for the bus in the snow seemed like a lifetime ago. But I never forgot the lesson of that betrayal. True value isn't in credentials or others' expectations. It's in what you build with your own hands and mind. I had no idea that lesson was about to come full circle in the most unexpected way. The corner office on the 42nd floor offered a panoramic view of Chicago's skyline. A daily reminder of how far I'd come. As the youngest CEO of Horizon Technologies, formerly Global Innovations, I had transformed the company in 2 short years. Our stock had tripled. Our corporate culture had evolved from rigid hierarchy to collaborative innovation. Most importantly, we valued talent in all its forms. "Mr. Collins, your 9 a.m. is here," my assistant Bradley announced through the intercom. "Send them in," I replied, straightening my tie. The custom-tailored suit still felt foreign sometimes, a costume for the role I now played. In quiet moments, I sometimes saw flashes of that young man with grease-stained hands working on a Mustang with his dad. My executive team filed in for our Monday strategy meeting, brilliant minds from diverse backgrounds. Melissa with her MIT doctorate. James, who dropped out of high school but built a tech empire from his garage. Kira, who climbed from reception desk to CFO through sheer determination. "Before we start," I said, "I want to share our new recruitment initiative." I outlined my vision for a program that would identify unconventional talent, people whose practical intelligence might not be reflected in traditional credentials. "The Collins Pathways Program," Melissa suggested. I smiled. "Let's not name it after me." "Why not?" James countered. "Your story is exactly what this program represents. College dropout to CEO by 33. They didn't know the full story, of course. None of them knew about the car, the betrayal, the years of estrangement from my family. To them, I was just a success story of alternative paths to achievement. After the meeting, Rachel called. We'd been married for just over a year now, and she was handling marketing for a major nonprofit. "Did you see the email I forwarded?" she asked. "The one about your parents?" I sighed. "Not yet. Been in meetings all morning. They want to visit next weekend. I think you should say yes." Rachel had been gently pushing for family reconciliation. "The longer you wait," she often said, "the harder it gets." "I'll think about it," I promised, knowing I'd probably agree. Rachel had a way of helping me see beyond old wounds. Later that afternoon, I finally opened my parents' email. The usual awkward overtures, updates about relatives I barely remembered. And then something that made my stomach clench. Tyler had lost another job. His 5th in 7 years. "He's struggling to find his footing," Mom wrote. "All that education. And he can't seem to settle anywhere. We're worried about him." The irony wasn't lost on me. The golden child, the Harvard MBA they'd sacrificed my car for. couldn't translate his prestigious education into career stability. I closed the email without responding. I'd deal with it later. That evening, as Rachel and I enjoyed dinner at our favorite restaurant, she broached the subject again. Have you thought about offering Tyler a job? I nearly choked on my wine. Are you serious? Hear me out, she said, reaching for my hand. You're always talking about how Horizon needs to be a place where different kinds of intelligence are valued. Maybe Tyler's theoretical knowledge combined with your practical approach could be powerful. Rachel, you don't understand what happened. I understand perfectly, she interrupted gently. They favored him. They stole from you to fund his education. It was wrong on every level. But you've won, Nathan. Look at your life, your success. Maybe it's time to let go of the anger. I stared out the window at the Chicago night. I don't know if I can work with him. Then don't. She shrugged. Have him interview like anyone else. If he's not qualified, that's that. But if he is, wouldn't it be interesting to see what happens? The idea percolated in my mind over the next few days. I hadn't seen Tyler in nearly 3 years, not since a brief, uncomfortable encounter at a cousin's wedding. He'd seemed diminished somehow, the golden glow of potential faded to a dull uncertainty. On Thursday, a notification from our HR system caught my attention. A new application for a senior product strategy position. The name jumped out at me, Tyler Collins. My finger hovered over the delete button. Then curiosity won out. I opened his resume. Harvard MBA, as expected. 5 companies in 7 years, all prestigious names. Glowing recommendations that felt formulaic. Nothing that explained why he couldn't maintain employment. On paper, he was exactly the kind of candidate Horizon usually pursued. But I knew better than to judge on paper qualifications alone. On impulse, I called HR. The Tyler Collins application for product strategy. I'd like to conduct the first interview personally. Sir? The HR director sounded confused. That's unusual for your level. I'm aware. Please schedule it for Friday afternoon, last appointment. And don't mention my name. Just the CEO wants to conduct the initial interview. After hanging up, I wondered if I was making a mistake. Was this about healing old wounds or picking at scars? Was I setting up a professional interaction or orchestrating a dramatic confrontation? Rachel found me on the balcony that night, staring at the city lights. Tyler applied for a job at Horizon, I told her. I'm interviewing him tomorrow. She sat beside me, silent for a moment. Are you okay with that? I don't know, I admitted. Part of me wants to show him how wrong they were about me. Part of me wants to help him. And yes, part of me wants him to know what it cost me when they sold that car. She leaned her head on my shoulder. Just remember who you are now. Not who you were when you were hurt. The next day moved in slow motion. Every meeting, every decision, every conversation seemed to happen through a fog as I anticipated the 4:30 p.m. interview. By 4:15, my palms were sweating like I was the job applicant, not the CEO. Bradley buzzed. Your final appointment is here, sir. I straightened my tie, adjusted my CO badge, and took a deep breath. Send him in. Tyler looked older than 31. His hairline had receded slightly, and fine lines had formed around his eyes. The confident swagger I remembered had been replaced by a more measured gait. He wore an expensive suit that somehow seemed to wear him rather than the other way around. Mr. Collins? He said, extending his hand as he approached my desk. Thank you for taking the time to meet with me personally. It's an honor. He didn't recognize me. The realization hit like a physical blow. My own brother, standing 3 feet away, had no idea who I was. Had it been that long? Had I changed that much? Or had he simply never really seen me? Please sit down. I gestured to the chair across from my desk, using a slightly deeper voice than my natural tone. I like to personally interview candidates for senior positions. Tyler nodded earnestly, taking the seat and placing his leather portfolio on his lap. I appreciate the thoroughness. It speaks to the company culture Horizon is known for. I studied him for a moment. This stranger who shared my blood. Tell me about yourself, Mr. Collins. Beyond what's on your resume. He launched into a well-rehearsed speech about his education, his experience, his passion for strategic innovation, and commitment to excellence. It sounded polished but empty, like he was reciting lines from a business school textbook. Impressive credentials, I said when he finished. Harvard MBA. That must have been quite an investment. A flicker of something, discomfort, crossed his face. Yes, it was. My parents made significant sacrifices for my education. I see. And the frequent job changes? 5 positions in 7 years is unusual for someone with your background. Tyler shifted in his seat. I've been seeking the right fit. A place where I can truly apply my knowledge and make a meaningful impact. And why weren't the previous 5 companies the right fit? He hesitated, clearly not expecting such direct questioning. Different reasons. At McKinsey, the travel was unsustainable. At Tech Innovations, there was a reorganization. At Bellman Group. He trailed off. Yes? I prompted. To be honest, there was a disconnect between theoretical approaches and practical application. I found myself frequently at odds with management over implementation strategies. I leaned forward slightly. So you had the right ideas, but they didn't listen? Something like that. Tyler admitted. My academic training emphasized certain methodologies that sometimes conflicted with established practices. The real world rarely follows textbook examples, I observed. Exactly, Tyler said, seeming relieved at my understanding. That's been the challenge. Finding an organization that values innovative thinking backed by academic rigor. I nodded, keeping my expression neutral. What do you know about Horizon Technologies? You're revolutionizing the industry with your integrated approach to technology solutions. Your corporate culture is known for valuing diverse perspectives and fostering innovation. And your CEO. He paused, clearly trying to recall my name without being obvious. Yes? I said, fighting a smile. Your CEO has a reputation for unconventional business wisdom. Someone who rose through the ranks through practical intelligence rather than traditional credentials. If only he knew. Let's talk about a specific scenario, I said, changing tactics. You're leading a product strategy team. You have a brilliant idea based on your academic knowledge. But your team members, who have years of practical experience, disagree with your approach. What do you do? Tyler thought for a moment. In my previous positions, I might have pushed harder for my solution. But I've learned that theoretical knowledge has limitations. I listen to their concerns, incorporate their practical insights, and develop a hybrid approach. It was a good answer. Better than I expected. Perhaps Tyler had learned something from his employment struggles after all. One more question, I said, watching him carefully. What's the most significant mistake you've ever made, and what did you learn from it? The color drained slightly from Tyler's face. This was clearly not a question he had prepared for. He opened his mouth, closed it, then took a deep breath. My biggest mistake, he said slowly, was accepting benefits that came at someone else's expense. My heart skipped a beat. I allowed my parents to sell my brother's car to help pay for my Harvard MBA. He continued, his voice growing quieter. I knew it was wrong. I knew how much that car meant to him. But I wanted Harvard so badly that I stayed silent. I lost my brother's trust and respect. Years later, I'm still paying for that decision, not financially, but in ways that matter more. I struggled to maintain my composure, not expecting this level of self-awareness. And what did you learn? I managed to ask. That no achievement is worth sacrificing relationships. that credentials don't automatically translate to capability, and that sometimes the people we dismiss as less academic have wisdom we desperately need. He looked directly at me then. My brother was like that. Practically gifted in ways I never was. I wonder sometimes where he is now, what he's built with those gifts. The irony of the moment was almost too much to bear. I cleared my throat. Thank you for your candor, Mr. Collins. Just one last question. Of course. I leaned forward, removed my glasses, and spoke in my natural voice. How's that MBA working out for you, Tyler? Tyler's expression transformed in stages. Confusion, then shock, then disbelief, and finally recognition. His mouth opened, but no words came out. He blinked rapidly, as if his brain was frantically trying to reconcile the successful CEO before him with the brother whose car had been sacrificed for his education. Nathan? He finally managed, his voice barely above a whisper. Is that really you? In the flesh, I replied, keeping my tone even. CEO of Horizon Technologies. Quite a coincidence that you applied here, isn't it? Tyler slumped back in his chair. I had no idea. The company was Global Innovations when I started researching potential employers. The rebrand to Horizon must have happened after. He shook his head in disbelief. Nathan, this is incredible. You're the CEO of a Fortune 500 company? Funny how things work out, I said, unable to keep a hint of satisfaction from my voice. No Harvard MBA required, apparently. The silence that followed was heavy with 12 years of history, resentment, and unspoken words. Tyler stared at his hands, then back at me, clearly struggling to process the situation. I don't know what to say, he finally admitted. Congratulations seems inadequate. And I'm not sure I'm sorry covers what happened with the car. It doesn't, I confirmed. But I appreciate the sentiment. Tyler ran a hand through his hair. A nervous gesture I remembered from childhood. So what happens now? Is this interview over before it really began? I considered the question carefully. Part of me, the wounded 21-year-old who came home to find his prized possessions sold, wanted to dismiss Tyler outright. To let him feel a fraction of the rejection I'd experienced. But the CEO, the leader who valued potential in all its forms, saw another possibility. The interview continues, I decided. But let's drop the pretense. Talk to me honestly, Tyler. What's really been happening with these job changes? Why can't the Harvard MBA golden boy find his footing? Tyler winced at my characterization but didn't argue with it. The truth? He sighed deeply. I've been drowning. Everyone expects brilliance because of my credentials. Every employer thinks they're getting a guaranteed superstar. But real business isn't like case studies. It's messy and intuitive and full of unwritten rules. And they don't teach that at Harvard? I couldn't resist asking. They teach frameworks and theories. They teach you to analyze businesses on paper. Tyler looked up, meeting my eyes directly. But they don't teach you how to read a room full of employees who resent your title. They don't teach you how to build trust with people who assume you're just another MBA who thinks he knows everything. There was a raw honesty in his words that caught me off guard. So all these job changes. I keep thinking the next place will be different. That I'll finally find somewhere my education translates into real value. Tyler's voice cracked slightly. But the truth is, I've been faking it. Trying to live up to expectations I can't meet. The imposter syndrome is crippling, Nathan. Everyone thinks Harvard MBAs have all the answers. We don't. I leaned back in my chair, studying my brother with new eyes. The golden child had tarnished considerably. Tell me about the jobs, I said. The real story, not the sanitized resume version. For the next hour, Tyler opened up about his professional struggles. McKinsey had been overwhelming. 16-hour days of high-pressure consulting with clients who expected miracles. Tech Innovations had hired him for his prestigious degree but sidelined his input in favor of executives with industry experience. Bellman Group had been toxic, with a leadership team that used him as a scapegoat for failed initiatives. The last position was the worst, Tyler admitted. They hired me as a strategic advisor, but it was really about having a Harvard MBA they could mention to clients. When I tried implementing actual changes, I was told to stay in my lane. That must have been difficult, I acknowledged, surprised by my own empathy. The hardest part is knowing Mom and Dad sacrificed so much for this education, Tyler said quietly. Your car, their retirement savings, all for a degree that was supposed to guarantee my success. How do I tell them it's not working out? That the golden investment hasn't paid off? I felt a twinge of something unexpected, connection. For all our differences, Tyler and I shared the burden of parental expectations, just from opposite ends of the spectrum. They still don't know? I asked. Tyler shook his head. I've been vague about the job changes. They think I'm exploring different sectors to find my passion. He gave a bitter laugh. The truth is I'm just trying to find somewhere I'm not a failure. You're not a failure, Tyler, I said, surprising myself with the sincerity of the statement. You're just on a path that doesn't match your strengths. He looked up sharply. That's unusually generous, given our history. I shrugged. I've had 12 years to process what happened. And building this company has taught me to look for value in unexpected places. Is that why you're talking to me instead of having security escort me out? Tyler asked with a hint of his old humor. Partly, I admitted. And partly because I'm curious. What exactly were you hoping to find at Horizon? Tyler considered the question. Honestly? A fresh start. Somewhere I could contribute without the weight of my resume preceding me. Somewhere the work matters more than the credentials. He gestured around the office. The irony that you built exactly that kind of company isn't lost on me. And what about us? I asked, addressing the elephant in the room. Did you ever try to make amends for the car? Tyler's expression fell. I tried reaching out those first few years. Calls, texts, emails. After a while I just stopped. It seemed like you wanted a clean break from all of us. I did, I acknowledged. But that was anger speaking. And hurt. I should have stood up to them, Tyler said quietly. When they told me about selling your car, I should have refused the money. I was a coward, Nathan. I chose Harvard over my brother, and it's the biggest regret of my life. The simple admission hit me harder than I expected. For years, I'd carried the image of Tyler as complicit, even smug about the betrayal. Hearing his regret, seeing the genuine pain in his eyes, challenged that narrative. What about Mom and Dad? I asked. Do they know we're meeting today? Tyler shook his head. They know I applied to Horizon. But they have no idea you're connected to the company. We don't talk about you much. It's too painful for everyone. I nodded, processing this new information. And if I offered you a position here? How would you handle that? Tyler looked startled. Are you actually considering it? After everything? I'm considering all possibilities, I said carefully. But I need to know where your loyalties would lie. Would you run to Mom and Dad with updates about my life? Would you expect special treatment as the CEO's brother? No to both, Tyler said firmly. If, and it's a big if, you offered me a position, I'd want it to be on merit alone. No special treatment. No family connections. I'd want to earn my place here, just like anyone else. I studied him, searching for signs of insincerity but finding none. And what would you tell Mom and Dad? That I found a company where I can learn and contribute. Nothing about you unless you wanted me to. He hesitated. Though I think they'd want to know, Nathan. They miss you in their way. Their way being the problem. I noted dryly. Tyler didn't argue the point. They're still the same people, with the same blind spots. But they're older now. Dad especially has softened. He talks about you sometimes. About the car restoration. I think he regrets a lot. I let that information settle, either accepting nor rejecting it. Let's get back to the matter at hand. Why should I hire you, Tyler? Given our history, given your track record, why take the risk? Tyler thought carefully before answering. Because I've learned humility the hard way. Because I understand now that academic knowledge is just one type of intelligence. Because I'd worked twice as hard to prove myself worthy of the chance. He met my gaze steadily. And because I think brothers working together could be powerful, if we could move past our history. His answer was thoughtful, measured, lacking the entitlement I might have expected. But could I really work with Tyler? Could we build a professional relationship on the ashes of our personal one? As I pondered these questions, I realized that the decision before me wasn't just about a job application. It was about the kind of person I wanted to be. The kind of leader. The kind of brother. I need time to think, I said finally. This is a lot to process. Tyler nodded, gathering his portfolio. I understand. Thank you for even considering it, Nathan. Regardless of your decision, it's good to see you. To see what you've built. You've proven everyone wrong, and I'm genuinely happy for you. As he stood to leave, I made a split-second decision. Tyler, wait. There's one more thing we need to discuss. Tyler paused, his hand on the doorknob. Yes? Sit down, I said, gesturing to the chair again. I've made a decision. He returned to his seat, tension visible in every line of his body. I let the silence stretch for a moment, gathering my thoughts. I'm not going to offer you the senior product strategy position, I said finally. Tyler's face fell, but he nodded acceptance. I understand. Our history makes it complicated. That's not why, I clarified. You're not qualified for it. Your resume shows no product development experience, and your pattern of job hopping suggests you haven't developed the leadership skills necessary for a senior role. His cheeks flushed with embarrassment, but I continued before he could respond. However, I am prepared to offer you an entry-level position in our product development team. Same benefits as any new hire, standard salary for the role, no special treatment. You'd report to Melissa Chen, who doesn't suffer fools but is brilliant at developing talent. If you accept. No one except Rachel and HR would know you're my brother. Tyler's expression transformed from disappointment to surprise to cautious hope. You're serious? An entry-level position? Completely serious. You'd start at the bottom, Tyler. Learn the business from the ground up, the way I did. Prove yourself through results, not credentials. It won't be easy. And some people might question why a Harvard MBA is taking such a junior role. But it would be a fresh start. A chance to build something real. He was quiet for a long moment, processing the offer. I half expected indignation or wounded pride. Instead, he smiled, a genuine smile that reminded me of the brother I'd once known. When can I start? The next 3 months were a fascinating study in transformation. Tyler threw himself into his entry-level role with unexpected enthusiasm. He arrived early, stayed late, asked thoughtful questions, and most surprisingly, never once mentioned his Harvard credentials. Melissa was initially skeptical. He's eager but green, she reported after his first month. Though he picks things up quickly. There's potential there. By the second month, her assessment had evolved. He's got good instincts once he stops overthinking everything. And the team likes him. He's not afraid to admit what he doesn't know. Rachel was delighted by the development. I told you it could work, she said one evening as we discussed Tyler's progress. Have you thought about telling your parents? The question had been hovering in my mind. Tyler had kept his word, mentioning nothing about our relationship to anyone at work and apparently keeping details vague with our parents. But the situation felt unsustainable long-term. Maybe it's time, I admitted. But on my terms. The opportunity came sooner than expected. Mom called the following weekend, her voice tentative. Nathan, your father and I would like to visit. It's been too long. And we're not getting any younger. Instead of my usual deflection, I agreed. I'll have Rachel make dinner reservations. And Mom? Tyler will be joining us. The silence on the other end spoke volumes. Tyler? He's in Chicago? He is. Working at my company, actually. But we can discuss that when you're here. The evening of the dinner arrived with a sense of momentous occasion. Rachel had chosen an upscale restaurant with private dining rooms, neutral territory for what promised to be an emotional encounter. Tyler arrived first, then my parents. Looking older and more uncertain than I remembered. Dad embraced me awkwardly while Mom hovered nearby, her eyes darting between Tyler and me with obvious confusion. You two have reconnected? She asked as we sat down. Tyler didn't mention. It's complicated, I said, signaling the waiter for wine. Tyler applied for a job at Horizon Technologies 3 months ago. He didn't know I was the CEO. Mom's eyes widened. CEO? Nathan, you never told us. There's a lot we haven't told each other, Mom. That's partly why we're here tonight. Over appetizers. I explained my journey from IT support to chief executive, watching their expressions shift from surprise to disbelief to a dawning realization of what they missed. Dad seemed genuinely proud, while Mom struggled to reconcile her long-held beliefs about my potential with the successful man before her. All this without a college degree, she murmured, more to herself than anyone at the table. All this because of who Nathan is, Rachel corrected gently but firmly. The same person he's always been, if you had looked closely enough to see. The comment hung in the air, uncomfortable but necessary. Tyler cleared his throat. Mom, Dad, there's something else you should know. The position I have at Horizon? It's entry level. I'm starting over, learning the business properly this time. Dad frowned. But your MBA, Harvard, hasn't given me what I really needed. Tyler finished. Nathan has. A chance to build something real, based on actual work rather than theoretical knowledge. Mom looked between us, her carefully constructed worldview visibly crumbling. I don't understand. We invested so much in your education, Tyler. The sacrifices we made. Like selling Nathan's car? Tyler said quietly. That's something we need to talk about. All of us. What followed was the most honest conversation our family had ever had. Dad admitted he'd known selling my car was wrong but lacked the courage to stand against Mom's determination. Mom, defensive at first, finally acknowledged the profound hurt she'd caused by valuing academic achievement above all else. I thought I was doing what was best, she said, tears in her eyes. I truly believed education was the only path to success. Looking at you now, Nathan. I was so wrong. Can you ever forgive me? The question hung in the air as I considered everything that had happened since that fateful day. The betrayal had driven me from my family, but it had also set me on the path that led to Horizon. To Rachel, to the life I'd built. I'm working on it, I said honestly. It's a process. Mom nodded, accepting this partial forgiveness as more than she'd dared hope for. Dad reached across the table, placing his weathered hand over mine. I've never been more proud of anyone than I am of you right now, son. What you've built, who you've become. And finding it in your heart to give your brother a chance despite everything. That takes a special kind of strength. The simple words healed something in me I hadn't realized was still broken. All those years, I'd thought I wanted my parents to admit they were wrong. What I'd really wanted was for them to see me, truly see me, and value what they saw. As dinner concluded, I made an impulsive decision. Tyler, come with me tomorrow. There's something I want to show you. The next morning, I drove Tyler to a private garage on the outskirts of the city. Using a key from my pocket, I unlocked the door and flipped on the lights. In the center of the space, under a protective cover, sat a 1987 Ford Mustang, candy apple red. Tyler's breath caught. Is that? No, I said, pulling back the cover. That car is long gone. But this one. I found it 2 years ago. Same model, similar condition to what mine was when I started restoring it. I've been working on it weekends. A piece at a time. Tyler circled the car reverently. It's beautiful. But why show me? I handed him a wrench. Because I could use a hand with the transmission. If you're interested in learning. His smile was answer enough. Over the following months, a new pattern emerged. Tyler thrived in his role at Horizon, earning a promotion through merit alone. Weekends often found us in the garage, restoring the Mustang together, healing old wounds through shared purpose. My parents visited more frequently, slowly rebuilding trust through consistent effort and genuine interest in my life. At our wedding that fall, Tyler stood beside me as best man. During his speech, he spoke words that brought the room to tears. My brother taught me that true success isn't measured by degrees or titles, but by what you build with your own hands and heart. The car he's restoring now is beautiful, but the life he's created, and his capacity for forgiveness, that's his true masterpiece. 6 months later, the Mustang restoration complete. Tyler and I took it for a drive along Lake Michigan. As the engine roared and the wind rushed through the open windows, I reflected on how differently things had turned out from what either of us had expected. You know, Tyler said, raising his voice over the engine. Sometimes I think losing that Harvard job was the best thing that ever happened to me. Forced me to find a different path. And sometimes, I replied, I think having my car sold was the best thing that ever happened to me. Forced me to build something they couldn't take away. Life rarely follows the path we expect. The betrayals that seem devastating can become catalysts for growth. The setbacks that appear to define us can ultimately refine us. And sometimes, the greatest success comes not from following others' expectations, but from having the courage to define success on your own terms. As we cruised along the shoreline, the restored Mustang a symbol of what could be rebuilt with patience and effort, I felt gratitude for the journey, every painful, beautiful, unexpected turn that had led me here. If you're facing your own crossroads, your own betrayal, your own moment of redefinition, remember this: true value isn't in credentials or others' expectations. It's in what you build with your own hands and mind. Your path may not be straight or conventional, but it can still lead somewhere extraordinary. Thank you for taking this journey with me. If my story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share with someone who might need to hear it. Have you ever had a betrayal turn into a blessing in disguise? Let me know in the comments below. Until next time, this is Nathan Collins, reminding you that sometimes life's greatest detours lead to the most beautiful destinations.